The S-rank warden slams its obsidian halberd down, and the system's golden UI shatters like glass in mid-air. Then the shards start getting chewed, one, by my own floating mouth-shaped cursor. Everyone got weapons and elements. I got pop-up blocker, passive. It turns out the only thing scarier than an S-rank boss is a skill that can bite the rules. If the system finishes forced update Z0.17, the city hard resets, and I'll be deleted with it. And the worst part is, the system is already blaming me. Because to understand why a joke skill terrified an S-rank that's literally programmed to never die, you need to see what happened 60 seconds earlier. 60 seconds earlier, my name is Min Jae-in, and I'm sprinting through the skeleton of a subway station that still smells like burnt wiring and cold panic. The new world has only been here for 3 hours. 3 hours since every phone, billboard, and TV in Korea flashed the same message at the same time. System initialization complete, and then the air itself started sorting people, not with destiny or prophecy, with pop-ups. Class windows bloomed in front of faces like invasive ads, and half the station screamed because they couldn't swipe them away. Some people got shining titles: Pyromancer, Paladin, Storm Archer. They lifted their hands and found fire, light, arrows that weren't there a second ago. I got a tiny grey window with a thin border, like a forgotten browser setting. Class, ad breaker. Primary skill, pop-up blocker, passive. Description, blocks intrusive system notifications. And beneath it, in smaller text, like the system itself was embarrassed. Rank F. The station went quiet for half a breath, and then the laughter hit me harder than the quake that opened the first dungeon gate. A man in a firefighter jacket, B-rank tank by the look of his armor UI, pointed at my window and wheezed. A college kid with a staff made of pure interface light snapped a screenshot, because of course he did. Even the ones who weren't cruel looked relieved. At least it wasn't them. Then the station ceiling split open like paper, and the first monster dropped through. A centipede the length of a bus, made of segmented stone, with a wet red seam where its mouth should be. Its nameplate hovered above it in the same cheery font as my humiliation. Dungeon Pest, Cruel Jaw, rank D. It landed on a platform bench, and the bench vaporized under its weight. That was the first time I realized what system apocalypse really meant. No government response, no please remain calm. Just a new rule: if you can't fight, you get eaten. The B-rank tank charged with a roar. His shield appeared, hex-patterned and clean, like it had never been through a war. The staff kid cast a bolt of blue that left a trail of floating numbers. Damage. Everything became a game. Except the screaming. I tried to do what the system taught everyone to do in the first hour. Focus, call your skill, survive. A translucent hotbar pulsed in my vision. Pop-up blocker, passive, on. No activation, no cooldown, no mana, just on. The cruel jaw swung its head and sprayed a fan of gravel-sharp teeth. The tank blocked, the staff kid ducked. 3 civilians behind them didn't even understand what was happening before their health bars emptied. That's when my first real pop-up appeared. Warning, you are out of safe zone. I flinched because the window wasn't just in my vision. It was in the air, physical, luminous, annoying. Blocking the monster, blocking the exit, blocking my life. The tank shouted, "Move!" And I did the only thing I could think to do. I reached up and slapped the warning window like it was a mosquito. My palm passed through light, then caught. The pop-up didn't disappear. It bent, like a sheet of plastic. And when I dragged it, it dragged. It obeyed me. My joke skill didn't block notifications. It made them touchable. My breath caught. The cruel jaw lunged, jaws opening along that red seam. I yanked the warning window sideways on pure instinct, and the glowing rectangle swept through the air like a riot shield. It hit the monster's mouth, not with force, with authority. The cruel jaw's head snapped aside as if a rule had been enforced. Its nameplate flickered. The damage numbers didn't appear. Instead, for one frame, the monster's UI stuttered and a tiny text line flashed under its health bar. Status: action interrupted. The staff kid stopped mid-cast. The tank's eyes widened. And right then, over my own hotbar, a new label stamped itself into existence like a rubber seal. New rule unlocked. Object, system window. Property, collision enabled. My skin went cold, because if a system warning could become a physical object, what else could? The tank rammed his shield into the crawl jaw, and finally the blue damage numbers poured out. The monster shrieked. The station shook. I didn't wait to be laughed at again. I ran. And as I ran, the system chased me with more pop-ups. Quest, survive. Tutorial tip, equip your weapon. Achievement available, first blood. They were everywhere, blooming in front of my face at the exact wrong moments, like the system had the worst timing in the universe, except now I could grab them. I started swatting them aside to see, then I started stacking them because they were rectangular, hard, and the street outside was already full of teeth. By the time I burst out onto Jongno, the sky had a crack in it. Not a metaphor, a literal fracture, like the blue above Seoul had been hit with a hammer and something dark was pushing through. And under that crack, people were fighting in the open, their class windows hovering beside them like name tags at a conference from hell. Someone screamed, "Gate!" A circle of white UI lines spun above the crosswalk, and a doorway of pure menu light opened in mid-air. Dungeon breach detected. Boss entity, Warden of the Patch. Rank S. The words didn't feel like text, they felt like a sentence written onto the world. The crowd's noise died, because everyone, even the strong ones, understood one thing by now. S rank meant you don't win, you just die slower. The doorway widened, and something stepped out. It was tall, too tall, 8 feet, maybe more, but the wrong part was the way it moved. Not like an animal, not like a person, like a loading bar reaching completion. Its armor was made of segmented black panels with bright seams of code running through them, a helmet with no face. In its hands, an obsidian halberd whose blade looked like a cursor arrow sharpened to murder. Its nameplate floated above it, crowned with a golden border. Warden of the Patch. Subtitle, Administrator's Hand, and under that a single line that made my stomach drop. Special, no respawn. Then the system itself spoke, in a voice that wasn't sound so much as pressure behind my eyes. Anomaly detected. It wasn't talking about the warden, it was talking about me. A red outline snapped around my field of view. Target, Min Jae-in. Cause, UI tampering. Protocol, forced update. A timer appeared. Forced update, EO1.0. And every other pop-up on the street vanished, as if the system had cleared its desktop, so it could deal with the virus. Me? The tank from the station had somehow made it outside too, blood on his cheek, his shield cracked. He saw the red target outline around my vision, and his expression twisted into fear and suspicion. "Did you do that?" he yelled. Like I had summoned an S-rank boss for fun. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the warden moved. It didn't charge, it didn't roar, it simply lifted its halberd, and the air in front of it turned into a menu. A clean, bright, perfect interface panel. Patch notes, version 1.0.1, and as the warden swung, the panel swung with it like a blade. The first strike didn't hit a person, it hit the street, and the asphalt unzipped, not cracked, not shattered. Unzipped like a file being opened. A seam of white light split the ground, and the crosswalk lines peeled up like stickers. People ran, the strong ones ran too, because you can't tank a menu. The timer in my vision kept counting down. 52. 0051. I did the only thing that had ever worked since the system arrived. I grabbed the nearest window, except there weren't any. The system had stopped spamming the world. It had gone silent, and for the first time, my passive skill felt like a curse. What do you block when there's nothing to block? Then a tiny pathetic rectangle flickered into existence at the edge of my sight, like the last surviving ad on a dying website. Cookie consent. Accept. Decline. I almost laughed. I almost cried. The warden's halberd came down again, and this time the strike was aimed straight at the knot of civilians trapped behind an overturned bus. So what would you have done? I dove. My hands closed around the cookie window, and it felt like laminated paper with a pulse. I threw it. The rectangle spun through the air and expanded, not in size but in presence, like the world had decided it mattered. It slapped into the warden's halberd. The halberd stopped, not slowed, stopped. A passive joke-tier consent pop-up had just vetoed an S-rank attack. The warden's helmet tilted, and for the first time, its perfect UI seams flickered. System panic, the label stamped onto my view like a warning sign. The timer jumped. Forced update, 0 past 45. It was speeding up. The system was trying to push the patch through before I could... whatever it thought I was doing. The civilians behind the bus stared at me like I was something they didn't have a category for. The tank shouted, "He blocked it. He blocked an S-rank." And I heard the shift. Mockery turning into hunger, because in a world that just became a ranking ladder, people don't see miracles, they see leverage. Someone with a glowing sword, a rank duelist, stepped toward me, eyes locked on my hands. "Give me that skill," he said, like I could hand it over. The warden moved again. This time, it didn't swing. It opened a new panel in the air. Admin action. Disable user. A targeting reticle snapped onto my chest, and the air around me hardened, like invisible walls were assembling. My limbs felt heavier. A debuff bar appeared. Status: restricted. My breath went shallow. If that bar filled, I would become a frozen icon. The timer hit 0.30, pattern interrupt. Because the world did something it hadn't done yet. It glitched, not the monsters, not the gate, the street itself. A row of parked cars flickered into wireframes. A storefront sign stuttered between Korean and raw hex code. The sky crack widened, and behind it I saw a second layer of reality, white, empty, lined with grid marks. Like we were all living on top of an app, and the warden was about to update it. I stared at my one tool, the cookie pop-up still floating in front of me, vibrating like it wanted to disappear. My skill name pulsed, pop-up blocker, passive. Except now, after the collision rule unlocked, there was a second line, hidden effect, blocks intrusive system events. Intrusive. My eyes snapped to the warden's patch notes panel. Was an S-rank intrusive? Was a forced update intrusive? The system had always acted like its windows were helpful. But the moment it targeted me, it admitted what it really was. An invader. So I did something that felt like suicide. I stepped toward the warden. The duelist grabbed my shoulder. "Are you insane?" I shrugged him off, because the restricted bar was still crawling up my screen and the timer was still dropping, 0024. 0023, the warden raised its halberd and the patch panel flared brighter. Patch notes, version 1.0.1, fixed UI object interaction bug. Fixed anomalous user behavior. It was patching me. It was going to remove the one mistake that made me matter. I lifted the cookie pop-up like a shield and kept walking. The warden's admin panel flashed. Admin action. Force accept. The cookie window in my hands suddenly tried to flip on its own. The accept button pulsed. My fingers slipped. Because the system was trying to make me consent. That's when I understood. Pop-ups aren't about information, they're about permission. And my class wasn't adbreaker, it was consent enforcement. Or rather, consent refusal. My skill didn't block notifications, it blocked intrusion. So I did the only thing that could make an administrator hesitate. I hit decline. The cookie window exploded into a spray of tiny grey rectangles, each one a miniature refusal. Decline. 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 They stuck to the warden's armor like confetti, and where they touched, the bright code seams dimmed. The warden's nameplate flickered. Warden of the patch. Rank S. Then, for one heartbeat, the rank symbol scrambled. Rank. System panic. The label returned bigger, and the restriction bar on my screen paused, not because the system was being nice, because it couldn't decide what I was anymore. The duelist staggered back. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer, because the timer hit 0:15, and I remembered the peak moment I was still racing toward, the moment the UI would shatter, the moment the system would scream without sound. The open loop was right there, staring at me through the warden's blank helmet. How does a joke passive skill bite the rules? I needed one more thing, a bigger window. The warden lifted its halberd, and instead of swinging, it stabbed the air. The blade punctured the world. A rectangular hole opened, clean edges, white light inside, a settings menu. System settings, Admin only. My breath stopped. That was it. The source, the UI behind the UI, the system's throat. The warden's plan was simple: open the admin settings, apply the patch, erase the bug. Me. The civilians screamed as the sky crack widened again, reacting to the admin menu like a wound reacting to a knife. 0.12. 0.11. The warden reached toward the settings menu with one armored hand. And my passive skill did something it had never done before. A new icon appeared beside my hotbar, a tiny cursor arrow. It blinked like it was alive. Then it stretched, then it warped, and the arrow became a mouth. Not flesh. Interface, a jagged black shape outlined in white, like a cartoon bite mark. Skill evolution, pop-up blocker, passive, UI consumer. Description, blocks intrusive system events by consuming their interface. Rank, F, rank. The duelist whispered, "That's not a skill. That's a bug, a virus, a predator." The warden's helmet snapped toward me. It finally understood. It wasn't here to kill civilians, it was here to quarantine me. The timer hit 0010. The system spoke again, voice compressed into pure alarm. Forced update imminent, and then the mouth cursor lunged out of my hotbar like it was attached to my soul by a cable. It didn't fly like magic. It snapped like a pointer clicking. It bit the edge of the admin settings window. The sound was wrong. Not a crunch, a click. And the corner of the settings menu vanished. Not torn, deleted. The warden recoiled, halberd raised defensively, but the mouth didn't stop. It chewed. Each bite removed more UI. Each missing piece left behind not empty air, but a jagged absence, like reality didn't know how to render that spot. System panic. The label was now accompanied by a new one. Rank. Because the system couldn't rank something that was eating its categories. The warden swung its halberd in a desperate arc, and the patch notes panel became a guillotine aimed at the mouth cursor. The blade hit, and for a moment, the UI mouth buckled. I felt it in my teeth. Pain, like biting aluminum. But then the mouth cursor widened, and it bit the patch notes. The guillotine panel vanished in chunks. The warden froze. It had just lost its weapon, not dropped, unmade. Now we were back at the opening image, the system's golden UI, the boss's halberd, the impossible chewing. But we weren't done, because the system still had DAO-007 on the forced update, and the warden still had one function left. It opened its chest plate. Inside wasn't a heart. It was a spinning ring of text. Administrator token. If that token activated, it wouldn't matter if I ate menus. The system would rewrite the world around me. So I made a choice that felt like stepping off a roof. I aimed the mouth cursor not at the warden's weapon, not at its armor, at its nameplate, because in this world, your nameplate isn't decoration. It's your existence in the system. I whispered, "Block intrusion," and the mouth bit the golden border around Warden of the Patch. The border shattered. The title flickered. The subtitle Administrator's Hand glitched into unreadable symbols. The warden staggered, as if something invisible had been unplugged. The civilians stopped running long enough to stare. The duelist forgot to breathe, and then the system itself resisted. A new window slammed into my face like a lawsuit. Terms of service update. You must accept to continue existing. Accept, accept, accept. There was no decline. Of course there wasn't. The timer hit 0.05. This was the master question of the episode, tightening into a noose. How do you stop a system that can simply demand your permission? The answer was already in my hands. Pop-ups aren't information, they're UI. And my skill doesn't argue, it eats. The mouth cursor snapped up and bit the terms of service window. Chunks vanished. The forced accept buttons disappeared. And for the first time since initialization, the system failed to complete a sentence. You must, AC, gone. The street shook as if the world had exhaled. The forced update timer stuttered. 0.04, 0.12, 0.003. It couldn't decide, because the UI that controlled the timer was being consumed. The warden roared, not with a mouth, with an error. A burst of red text sprayed out of its helmet like blood made of code. Error, admin token invalid. Error, entity desync. It lunged at me with bare hands now, trying to physically crush what it couldn't patch. The duelist finally moved, slashing at the warden's back with a blade of light. His sword passed through black armor like it was smoke. Because it wasn't an armor problem, it was an existence problem. The tank slammed his shield in too, and the shield bounced off with a dull nothing. They couldn't hurt it. Only I could. The warden's hand closed around my throat. My health bar screamed down, my vision tunneled. EU002. The mouth cursor hovered, shaking, and I realized the last terrifying truth. If the forced update hit 0 while the warden was still alive, the system would have a reference point to restore. A template. It could respawn the administrator's hand. But if there was no warden in the database, there would be nothing to load. So I did it. I commanded the mouth cursor to open wide. It didn't just bite, it latched. On the warden's entire nameplate. It swallowed the words "Warden of the Patch" like they were a snack. Then it kept going. It bit the golden rank emblem. It bit the subtitle. It bit the invisible brackets that held the boss together as an entity. The warden's grip loosened. Its armor panels fell out of alignment like a model losing its rigging. The admin token in its chest spun faster, trying to authenticate, trying to call home. And then the mouth cursor bit the token. The token vanished. The warden didn't explode. It didn't die theatrically. It simply failed to continue. One frame it was there. The next it was a silhouette of black panels floating without a name. Then the silhouette collapsed into a pile of useless geometry. And then even that geometry dissolved into white pixels that had nowhere to go. S-rank boss deleted. Not killed, not defeated. Removed from the system's list. The forced update timer hit 00 and nothing happened. No reset, no wipe, no hard reboot. Because the patch had lost its installer. The street was silent except for distant screams from other parts of the city. Then the system's golden UI returned, faint at first, like it was afraid. A single window unfolded in front of me. System message. It tried to keep its usual font. It failed. The letters jittered. Anomaly. Containment. Failed. New rule required, and right there, where the warden's nameplate used to be, a crack spiderwebbed through the air. Not the sky, the interface layer. Like the system screen had been punched. New rule unlocked. Rule 0. UI is not immune. The civilians stared up at the crack as if they could see the hand that had been holding their lives like a controller. The duelist's sword dimmed. He looked at me, and the hunger in his eyes fought with fear. "What are you?" he asked. I didn't have an answer, because my class window was changing. The grey F-rank border peeled away. The title AD Breaker glitched, letters rearranging like a scrambled password. Then it settled into something new. Class, Content Moderator. Subclass, UI Predator. Rank. And beneath it my skill list expanded like a drop-down. UI Consumer, Active. New skill, Whitelist. Description, grants exception to selected entities. That word hit me harder than any halberd. Whitelist. It meant I could choose who the system's rules applied to, and who they didn't. The crack in the interface widened, and for a second I saw behind it an endless white grid with floating folders labeled in cold text. Humanity, monsters, dungeons, administrators. Then another folder slid into view, newly created as if someone had just added it. Anomalies. And my name was inside. The system message updated again, letters sharper now, angry. Notice, administrator dispatched. Not a warden, not a boss, an administrator. A real one. The air chilled. A new gate began to form above the cracked interface layer, but this one wasn't made of dungeon light. It was made of pure menu white. And a final line appeared under the warning, like the system was forcing itself to be polite. ETA, 24 Alakalau, 24 hours. A ticking clock I couldn't swipe away, because now the system wasn't just running the apocalypse, it was coming to meet the person who learned how to eat its face.